Hello, welcome everyone to this video on script theory, its development and evolution. This video is intended for advanced learners and is designed with experiential exercises. So the length of the time required may be more than what is shown as a video time. For best learning experience, please do the exercises. The learning objectives that I intend for my learners who watch this video are to be able to describe how Byrne conceived the development of ego states and script, to be able to identify the factors determining script development, to be able to identify the different theories of ego state development, to be able to discuss the current understanding of script development and how it is related to Byrne's theory. Conventional PAC model. We all have a child ego state because we were born as babies. We all have an adult ego state because we have grown up. And because we have learned from our parents, we also have a parent-like part in us, or called the parent ego state. What Byrne teaches about how these ego states are formed is based on his awareness about the brain involvement in the development of ego states at that time. So he calls them the psychic organizers. The oldest part of the brain, or the archicortex, is considered to be the area where the earliest recordings happen, and the later external influences are recorded in the middle region, and the final part of the developed part of the brain, that is the cortical region, is where the adult capability, or the neo-psych, or the new part of the personality is being recorded. So this is a diagrammatic picture showing that it is not exactly the brain. We'll see the exact brain later. And these three diagrams are representing, these three circles represent the three different parts of the brain. So in this picture, we are seeing the exact regions of the brain where the archicortex and the mesocortex and the neocortex are labeled like that. So the earliest part of the brain is what is labeled archicortex. The later developing region is called the mesocortex, and the final developing part is called the neocortex. All of them are cortical regions in the sense they are all seats in the brain where nerve cells are situated. Here we can see how the different parts of the brain produces different manifestations of the personality through its own manifestation, as well as being influenced by other parts of the brain. For example, the oldest part of the brain, from where archaeopsych or the child part develop, is also influenced by the neopsych and the exteriopsych. So it's a complicated way in which the personality manifests. It is not easy to say that this part of the brain manifests as the child, or this part of the brain manifests as the adult. Multiple regions in the brain are involved and they interact. So this was Byrne's way of illustrating that. So now we have come to an exercise. Please stop your video, read these questions, reflect on what you have learned, and write down your answers, and then proceed with the rest of the video. In this video, in this slide, we are trying to understand what are the genetic constituents of a person. So as you can see here, 50% each of the genes come from parents. 50% each of the great-grandparents have contributed to the parents' genes. And even they, the great-grandparents have received 50% each from their parents. So it goes on back to back like that. So the genetic influence of one child or one person is coming from multiple sources over the generations. Similarly, you can see here that the cultural influence also has multiple aspects to it. The so-called P1, which is a manifestation of whatever a person has learned from the parents. Inside the P1, there are multiple parental figures who have brought up a child. So multiple influences are even within the parents. Similarly, within the parental figure of the parent, the grandparent or their parental figures are also involved. So in this picture, the size of the circles imply the influence level of each of these parental figures, and the multiple colors imply the multiple personalities who have parented one person. And so the environmental influence also has generational impact and multiple sources being impacted here. This animation is an attempt to impress upon you the multiple factors that are involved in a ego state development and the level of interactions that different factors go through. Multiple genes from multiple sources, multiple external influences from multiple sources, plus the probability skill or the neo-psychic skills that a person develops, and all these interacts. Ultimately, the manifestation of a person is an outcome of all these interactions. These are the forces which Byrne says that act on the ego states. The genes, the culture, and the probability capability primarily. Then he implies a permeability of the boundaries of the ego states. Probably in his time he meant neurological elements. He even says in his writings that there is no evidence to say this, but it may once be proved. And today we know current neuroscience has some evidences to substantiate his concept. And he also implied the possibility of the energy dynamics between these different parts of the personality. So this also has been to a certain extent substantiated by the current neurology as per the reference that you can see here, where different parts of the brain, in the sense different network groups of the brain, different regions of the brain show additional blood flow, additional activity, and in multiple states of the personality. And some of the descriptions associated corroborates with Byrne's description. May not be 100%, but to a certain extent, this observations substantiates Byrne's proposition. This animated video is demonstrating how cultural scripting happens. How exactly the cultural elements get transmitted down to the growing child, from great-grandparents to grandparents to parents, and incorporated into the parent ego state of the child as first order, second order, and third order levels through the years. In the TIA community, ego states have been discussed in various models. Byrne implied the three ego state model, but later on many people have different thoughts. So here we are going to see how the three ego state model is used to describe how the ego state develops. The most important aspect of this is that in this picture the brain size is also implied, and it represents the physical growth of the person. And all the three ego states are shown as storing some informations. Let's see the picture how it is. This animated video is showing how the three ego states evolve over the years, normally as well as pathologically, what the outcome is. And when the pathological personality undergoes treatment, the aim is to direct it back to the normal situation where it would have grown had the pathology not taken place. So that is why this theory is about how the pathogenesis happens, and also how through therapy the pathology can be corrected. There is a model out there. So the work is based on this model. Yet another model is the integrating adult model. Here, use of more brain capacity is accepted but not picturized. The neopsych has the capacity at all ages to contact self and environment. That is why it is shown in the same size in all the developing stages. This picture illustrates the energy bound in the child and the P through the fading circles. So let's see the picture now. As said earlier, here you can see that the neopsych is shown in the same size, and the exteriopsych and the archeopsych are shown in dotted lines to imply that at every stage the neopsych has the ability to process what comes in the archeopsych and the exteriopsych, and what manifests in the now comes from the neopsych. And so here the word integrating is used because it's current and now. Byrne had used the word integrated, but in this model we use integrating adult. Both the three ego state model and the integrating adult model are all models, but this animated slide is showing you what are the real manifestations of ego states in ordinary life. There are multiple issues. There is contamination, there is exclusions, and multiple kind of exclusions. So these are all the realities of life. These are what we call as pathologies. So the theory aims at curing the pathology and facilitating the development of the person into the ideal self-actualizing person. This slide is trying to demonstrate what happens when the social canons impact the actively cathected neopsych. So there are multiple influences I said earlier, but I am just using two examples to see how the difference in the manifested personality will be. When the neopsych or the adult is the organizer and the parent or the exteriopsych is the influencer, the manifestation is a rational person. There will be authority in the person, but that person will be more rational in the expressions. It is called the rational authority. The opposite is what we are going to see in the next one. When the probability programming ability or the adult actively cathex with an influence from the exteriopsych or the parent part of the personality, what we are going to see is a authoritative authority. Here the organizer is the exteriopsych or the parent, and the influencer or the determinant is the neopsych or the adult capability. So what happens is the manifestation is a authoritarian parent part. The information or the probability are used by the authority. That is why it is called authoritarian authority. Now stop the video and answer this question. Write it down. Please use some example from your life. Maybe your practice, or you have seen somebody else practicing as rational authorities and authoritarian authorities, and describe the dynamics. How Byrne says that kind of multiple manifestations happen in the same ego state. This is an attempt to summarize Byrne's script theory. His objective was to illustrate pathogenesis of mental illness. He described script as the content of the framework of the ego states in 3 ego state model. Script was at that time conceived as a finished framework of the psyche that is ineffective or pathological. It's because basically it was made in observation from patients. He taught that script can be changed because they are learned and not inborn. So autonomy or cure, according to Byrne, was walking out of script. But we know that life is not rarefied and finalized. It is dynamic, vibrant and continuous. It's not a finished product. I assume if Byrne lived long enough to develop his theory further, he would have brought in all these concepts. But the colleagues have done it, and so let's see what is the present concept about script. Here we can see two observations. One from Richard Erskine, who said script is a life plan based on decisions made at any developmental stage which inhibit spontaneity and limit flexibility in problem solving capability. So it's any developmental age is the key point here. Another view is from Fenita English, who says our scripts enable us to blossom rather than preventing us from doing so. Even so, they may contain some restrictive elements, but the purpose of the script is facilitating our blossoming. So it's a different view from the way Byrne had described it. This is another way the script has been described by Babcock and Keepers. Life script is an ongoing formative process, usually not set until adolescence, describing it as the consolidation of family patterns, child's favorite and preferred modes of managing, cultural and historical influences. They emphasize the psychosocial perspective on human development and stage-specific hierarchy. They also emphasize the continued learning, relearning, and change, pursuing a drive towards health and satisfaction. So again, the changing approach to the script theory is what you can see here. This is a very comprehensive, consolidated view of present concept about TA theory as described by Bill Connell. I've given you the reference in the coming slide. So here we can see that life script is described as an ongoing process. And script formation is the process in which the individual attempts to make sense of his experiences. The purpose is to establish meaning and have a plan for how to live future. And major script decisions can be made at any point in life. And at the times of crisis, some of the restrictive elements of script do come up. That is what Bill Connell is describing. So you can see Bill is saying that perhaps it would be more inclusive to use a term like psychological life plan instead of life script, which has been used so far with an implication of dysfunctional pathological experience. This picture is the horizontal script matrix model proposed by Bill Connell. The major difference is the child and the parents are shown in this image at the same level. In the conventional script matrix, the child is shown at a level down. And you can see the lines or the vectors of transactions, permissions, drivers, and patterns are all at horizontal level and shown as mutual. So what it implies is the child influences the parent also. The parent influences the child also. It's not that the parent alone is causative of the child's script. Here I am demonstrating how Bill Connell's model has been used by a new stream of TA theory that is developing called the co-creative TA theory. So the concept is every experience is co-created. Even in therapy, the client and the therapist together creates the experience. And that is based on this idea that the script is developed by the child and the parent together. The parent's script is also being modified while interacting with the child. So, as described in the beginning, you can now see the multiple factors that influence the ego state manifestations and the multiple factors that influence change in the content of the script, which is a dynamic process. This slide is summarizing the current thinking about script development in the TA community. Observations show that script cure is a continuous process as long as life exists. Currently, in this concept, adult is described as integrating adult, not integrated adult. Particularly in the functional fluency model, which has been developed for educators, this aspect is emphasized. So the observation is substantiating the fact that script is a dynamic psychic structure. Today it is considered the channel for the ego to manifest, or the channel for the energy to manifest. Pathology in script is understood as something that happened in vulnerable years because of the aim to survive. So again, that is a positive outlook on even the dysfunctionalities that developed. The dysfunctionalities were an attempt to survive within the limited awareness. And all these survival conclusions are what is manifested in the ego states. Today, teaching of script is that it can continuously change and evolve in adult life. Even in Burns' original teaching, he has mentioned this. Script is learned, so it can be changed. But what we have additionally today is the neurological substantiation of his concept and idea that script development is related to the brain functioning and it is dynamic too. And there is energy change in that. Please pause the video, read these questions and write down your answers. If you need, go back and listen to the video, see the slides again. Please read the references given and make your own impressions and associate with your experiences both from your clinical practice as well as daily life. To be a very good TA practitioner, a sound theoretical understanding as well as connecting it with your own experiences is very important. So I'm trusting answering these questions will help you to do that. Thank you. I hope this video has been helpful. I would look forward to hearing from you any feedbacks or any further discussions in our live sessions.